Files afternoon session, the meeting back to order. One more here.
My favorite meal is fresh catfish, and green fried tomatoes. Yeah.
Here's this information site lease with the Flynn's. Give it to Corey, and Tammy told him about it now, but it's up to us to redo it, be just some date changes and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, we talked about that
Yeah.
last meeting and the
Right.
meeting before. Yep.
but I don't know if it's up to us to draw it up.
I think Corey will draw it up.
And get with what we recommend.
Well, except if we have a hard copy, we can make those kinds of changes and send them to Corey
Oh, okay.
to approve. If we don't, I don't think we should put it on Corey to retype it all. I think that falls on us.
Mhm.
I think they're just
Unless he volunteers, but I just don't think that that's fair.
there's only a couple things that's gonna be changed. So, okay, so what's your pleasure, if you would just,
We need to get that from probably in the commissioner files.
The original.
Yep, and we'll want to see if there's a electronic copy so that the changes are much easier. And then if there is an electronic copy, you can just change the dates. If not, we'll have to actually retype it.
Mhm.
I guess I'll have to ask Corey on that then. But the only, I think she wrote on here was, yeah, the effective date. Increasing each payment as stated. Everything sound okay with you there then?
We'll need to review it when it's finished before it goes to the county attorney. And that's where we would find any errors in spelling, dates, that kind of thing. He reviews it for the legal content.
Right.
Did I not just see a claim come through to pay for that?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's late,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
well, I'll just write down those couple things on a piece here and let you approve it then and whoever wants to type it up.
And then whenever you have that done, we can go ahead and vote to approve the contract, but we can't really do it until we see it finished and read
No.
it.
And that down to Ann, give it to, from Mayo.
Do you want to say what it is?
Okay, so
For the
Montana
record.
State Water Plan from DNRC.
Thanks, Ann. Any other mail, Franklin?
He's looking.
This here on that BLM communication lease, I did some checking. And I asked Diaz, I asked Mike what he knew about it. In here it tells about who's on it, Sheriff's Department, it's Rural Fire Districts, EMS, Broadwater County Road Department, TV District, Montana Internet. And I told her there was a problem with, wasn't sure that Brenda said it shouldn't come out of her budget and so on. So he said, here, do it, take it out of this, it's interoperability communications. He gave me the CIP number, 4003, if I raised building, and there's 15,000 in that account. He says to take it out of that account.
First off, there's an awful lot of questions with this. One, we haven't seen the contract at all. That was sent to Brenda, signed out, details were put on it, new information was put on it by Brenda on behalf of the county.
I think we need to see the contract.
Without question.
Well, this is a copy of it here, because this is what was sent to the commissioners.
But that's not
Exactly.
the contract though.
That's the problem. One of them.
Well, look good.
Hi there. Remember me?
Let's see.
On it.
Whoa.
Leaked on it, so just use the good end of the claim.
Right.
So if I come up with a blue nose, you guys.
I'm not saying a word. On that particular subject, if we don't have the answers yet, I'd like to have a meeting with Corey, the county attorney, and Brenda, and get to the bottom of this.
Well, I think
This
we-
is just
we better get it
absolutely ridiculous.
paid, and then decide what fund we're gonna, what, or
This is
DES said
But
we
we
can use
can't
that.
pay it until we know for sure what fund it comes out of.
You can't
Well,
just
okay.
arbitrarily pick a fund, especially a CIP, to pay a bill, Franklin. The contract did not come to the commissioners. We need to see it if we're being asked to pay it. That's the bottom line here. And then all the other issues need to be dealt with.
Well, did you see this? There's everything here, tells who's on the district and all that stuff.
Let me take a look at that. Please.
There's been a myriad of emails going back and forth on this. The issue is, one, it's never been brought to the commissioners. Two, only one commissioner has been authorized by the sheriff to have any information on this particular claim, and that's Franklin.
Why is
Oh, I
that?
don't-
Why is
I
that?
don't-
Good question.
I don't see any reason for that.
I don't either, and I want to know more of what's going on before we write a check. That's absolutely not common practice for this county, and I'm not gonna be privy to starting it now and then writing a check
Because all,
before getting
it
the
said on there,
answers.
correspondence or something, it was Brenda, Tammy, and me. I see that on there.
Okay.
I think we put it on the agenda for next week with Corey and Brenda also.
I agree. And I think we should have Tammy here too as a claims clerk.
That'd probably be a good idea.
Yeah.
So you want to take any more action on it?
Not today.
Okay.
I want those people all here first.
I agree.
Yeah, because this isn't the contract. This is,
So since Brenda's away, it probably wouldn't be done until next Wednesday then, right? Put on the,
On the next Monday, yeah.
a week from Monday.
A week from today,
Oh, I thought you said she doesn't come back till.
the 27th,
Oh,
this
this
Friday.
Wednesday, okay,
yeah.
sorry.
You put it on each department heads.
Yep.
Good idea.
The other thing that I would like to discuss and have on the agenda for next Monday is a finalization to this limbo that we're in with the IT and internet services, email
Yeah.
specifically. Garrett in the county attorney's office just, oh gosh, it was a week ago last Friday, I think. He told us that Summit is going to be either double or tripling their rates. And this change is by and large being driven by, I think, Department of Justice. We are currently paying for the old internet system, an email with the state, and we're paying for the new internet system because of that lawsuit that the sheriff filed that's put us in limbo. So we're paying in full for both, and neither one is working as it should. I'd like that resolved next Monday as well at the same time.
I
I'd like
agree.
to with the county attorney and Brenda at the same time.
Looks looks like it could be right after that,
Absolutely. I'm thinking we're gonna need a half hour for each.
yeah.
I want to get this down next Monday is,
You're in May,
next Monday for this, communication site.
yes.
Never done that before.
This is on this agenda here.
Maybe in the afternoon, because we need a half hour for each, so we're
Okay.
looking at an hour.
1:30, okay, at, right, 2:15 then.
Mhm.
Okay, and this is gonna be, sheriff, county attorney,
In Tammy.
and the limestone communication site.
So have you been missing this, Carla?
It is so busy, my head's like spinning.
Franklin, and email and internet service.
On that same meeting, or
Next
you're talking about a different date?
No, it's the same date, it's just one's after the other.
Okay,
But we need to have them both agended.
okay, and what's the other one now is, internet?
Internet and email services. And you need to put dash decision after each. We need to get these off our to-do list. They have been. This is ridiculous.
And I was going through this, I wonder if I lost my agenda, and
Yeah, I just wanna make sure I get sheriff, county attorney, Tammy, limestone communication site / decision, internet and email services and decision / decision.
I think it should say BLM site, bill and contract. So we aren't really talking about the site, we're talking about the overdue bill and the contract.
I think somebody paid it.
You wanna share mine? I can just.
No, I don't need it, I don't know what I did.
Okay, we'll get back to the agenda here at 1:30, Carla Bossy horse rescue claim.
Corey, do you have the original claim, please?
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
So are you missing us?
Sorry?
Are you missing us?
Not at all, I'm sorry. I mean,
I can't believe it.
from a work perspective, I miss you, of course, as people very much. So this is with regard to a claim that I submitted on December 31st at 6:15 p.m. I was, as you know, the duly elected county attorney until 11:59 of December 31st. By signing and dating the claim, as per our policy, I was certifying that the claim is correct and just in all respects. There has been, after I checked with Commissioner Ogert on the status of the claim, she advised me that there was an invoice missing, and that was my error. So I printed up an invoice for the boarding that the Simpsons had of 2 horses that were Rocky Acres horses, which came into the county's possession, or most certainly their legal custody, because the paperwork was never provided to me despite numerous requests to the sheriff's office and Agent Wall. But they were in our legal custody when we placed them with the Simpsons. So I made up an invoice, and when I talked with Ms. Simpson and looked over the various communications I had with the sheriff's office, I realized that I had incorrectly indicated that they had boarded for 1 month. They had actually boarded for 6 weeks, so I have to make a correction, which is to add $100 to the total of the claim. And I'm gonna make that correction and initial it. And I'm attaching the missing invoice. You guys don't have a stapler. And I'm asking that you pay it, and I'm just gonna leave it at that, because that claim is as correct and just as every other claim I submitted during my 2.5 years as the county attorney. It's my understanding that Mr. Swanson has some objections he's gonna present to you. Despite several emails between the two of us, he never offered those objections to me so that we might work it out. So I guess I'll let you hear from him, and then we will discuss other details as you request. Quite frankly, the reason I'm not gonna say more right now is that the treatment of Ms. Simpson and her family by the sheriff's office was abhorrent, possibly legally actionable, and in my opinion, morally wrong. So I have no idea what legal or common sense basis Mr. Swanson has for objecting to this claim, but I'll wait and hear it before I get into the gory details of what happened. Other than to say as well that at my request, I was provided by all the claims that have been paid out of the special PILT fund that was set aside for Rocky Acres horses to individuals, and there are numerous ones. These are all claims you all have approved and paid already. There are numerous claims here to Under Sheriff Meehan, Deputy Anderson, John Walsh, and Debbie Buck, who are all providing various kinds of services. John Walsh has horses located at his land, and he's being paid monthly for that. Deputy Anderson and Under Sheriff Meehan have horses that they're boarding at their houses, personal property, and they're being paid monthly. I just note looking through these claims, and I was busy talking to clients over the weekend because I'm necessary to meet with them on the weekends. So I didn't get to go through all of them, but I just noted this morning looking at one that apparently the boarding fee depends on, I guess, I don't know what it depends on, because Dusty Anderson's being paid $100 per horse a month, and here I see that Under Sheriff Meehan is charging $60 per week per horse for boarding. So apparently, I don't know what the rules are. I made many requests over the several months since the horses came in our custody in March of this last year, March 11, 2014. Advised the sheriff's office that all of these records needed to be provided to the county attorney's office for tracking purposes having to do with restitution and the ultimate outcome of the case, but also because legally we were required to be keeping the defendants and their counsel apprised of the location of the horses. During the time that I was still the county attorney, the horses were placed at various locations without any information being provided to me until after the fact. So I didn't have a record, and I don't know what decisions they're making or why on who gets paid how much. But everybody who has cared for these horses has been recompensed at a reasonable rate, except for the Simpsons. And so I wait to hear what Mr. Swanson has to say about why they should not be recompensed.
Corey, you there where you want to be?
Thank you very much, Commissioners. There's another, I don't know if you've seen these, but there's another package.
Yeah, I wrote them, so I've seen them.
This is not this overly complicated issue. The thing that's different about these two horses from all the other horses that are involved in the Rocky Acres case is that these two are no longer involved in the Rocky Acres case. And Under Sheriff Meehan is here, and at some point I'm gonna ask him to speak on it too. They're the property of the sheriff's office. They're no longer part of the case. And therefore, the sheriff's office has the authority to decide what to do with them, where to put them, etc. And they do anyway under the other ones, and basically in consultation with the county attorney's office. So, as I've researched this issue, when the claim came up to me, first of all, I thought it was odd because it was sent on January 1st by email when I was county attorney. So I said, well, I just gotta look at this again. And there's some questions about that. Various people said, well, what do we do with this thing? Which is a legitimate thing to do, right? Let's look at all these claims. So I looked at it, didn't know anything about these two horses, contacted the Under Sheriff Meehan and said, what's going on with these horses? And then talked to also Ted Wall, who's the livestock inspector who was involved in this. So the facts appear to me that the the sheriff's office never really wanted to place these horses with the Simpsons, but for whatever reason they did. Conversations, whatever. That doesn't really matter. What matters is this, they were placed under an arrangement, basically like a foster care arrangement, with a view towards Simpsons adopting the horses. That didn't work out for a couple reasons, one of which appears that they didn't have the setup and all the things necessary to take care of them. These two horses also have some specific problems that are unique to these horses. One of them has health problems, the other one has behavior problems. They weren't really suitable animals to be adopted out anyway, so they were brought back. We could probably all agree on that part of it. Anyway,
No.
so they were brought back. There's no written agreement that I found. And so we're looking at two aspects of law here. We're looking at administrative law and we're looking at contract law. Under administrative law, who has the authority regarding what happens with these horses? It should be the sheriff's office. It shouldn't be the county attorney's office. Secondly, who has the authority and the obligation to submit these claims? I believe it should be the sheriff's office. They're property of the sheriff's office. They're under the care of the sheriff's office through all these arrangements. So when I saw this thing, I went to the sheriff's office and I said, do you agree with this claim? Should we submit this claim? The answer was no, and the reason for that is going to the second issue we're dealing with, which is contract law. There's no written agreement here for a fostering and adoption arrangement with the Simpsons. There's no written agreement here that says the county is under an obligation to compensate them for boarding and costs. This was different than all these other boarding arrangements that we're talking about. The boarding arrangements that Carla brought up, and some of them are John Walsh, some of them are various deputies. Those are all done prior to me becoming county attorney. No horse has been moved from any of those positions except for there's a colt that's ready to be weaned and can be moved. And so really what we're down to is all those are horses that are being held and kept in place because of the Rocky Acres case. They're not property of the sheriff's office. These two horses are unique. And I haven't found any kind of written agreement where the sheriff's office said, we're gonna compensate you, even though this is not a boarding situation, it's a foster adoption arrangement. So, in the absence of such a written agreement, I don't see a county obligation to pay these costs. Under contract law, if there is no written agreement, there is a thing called reliance, where the court can say, yeah, we agree. There's no written agreement, but you took these various steps relying on some kind of a promise from whomever that you expended some costs. So out of fairness, we'll go ahead and pay. If the county commission says, out of fairness, because the Simpsons relied upon whatever arrangement they got, we'll go ahead and pay them, I think that's an option that's available to you. However, what I would tell you is that if there's any such written or oral assertions or statements that were given to the Simpsons, I don't think they were given by the sheriff's office. I think they were given by Carla as the county attorney. And so that's what came back to me. This thing looked messy. It should have had a written agreement, and there isn't one. And it should have been done through the authority of the sheriff's office, not through the county attorney's office. So I looked at it, looked at the sheriff's office information, and I said, I don't think we should pay it. We're not obligated to pay it. If out of the goodness of our heart we want to pay it because the Simpsons, maybe they feel like they've got a raw deal, I think there's grounds to pay it from a fairness point of view. I don't think there's an obligation to pay it. And I think we should ask Wynn to speak a little bit on it as well.
Lynn, do you want to come up or do you want to?
I'll just stand. I guess the easiest way is, I guess, be more just to have, you ask me a question, I can answer it. I guess going through the long drawn out thing here, I don't know how much time you guys have allotted for this, so I don't know which way you want to proceed. So tell me which way you want to go. If you want the full story, I'll tell you the full story. If you
I
want
think we want the full
the
story.
full story.
May I interject and ask, perhaps I could provide a succinct rebuttal, and then you could ask Mr. Undersheriff Meehan questions if you have them following my rebuttal, because I don't have a lot of time allotted for this. And my time is quite valuable, and I'm doing this on my own time. So I would ask that you allow me an opportunity to rebut. Corey clearly does not have the full information, which does not surprise me, having worked with the sheriff's office for 2.5 years. A number of the things that he said are evidence that he does not have the full information about what occurred here. So I don't fault him for that. And I'm sorry that he didn't have the time to call me or discuss it before we brought it to you, because we might have been able to work that out.
I'd like to let Wynn go ahead and proceed, since she claims there's more information, Wynn's the guy that's gonna have it.
That's
I
not,
don't think that it's helpful to just come smearing the sheriff's office, they're doing an excellent job. And, I mean, the idea that we're talking about a simple dispute over money, and now, oh, let's turn this into a big nuclear war and put it on YouTube so everybody can enjoy the fight, there's no point in that. This is a very simple matter, we're either going to resolve it one way or the other, and I'd like to hear Wynn's additional information, and then let Carla rebut that.
well, I would object to Corey's characterization. I think I said when I first presented you with the claim that I would avoid going into details as much as possible, so as not to have to make obvious to all the citizens of the county who might watch these meetings on YouTube, all of the ways in which the sheriff's office failed to properly inform and properly provide a written agreement, which I asked them to do at least a dozen times, to the Simpsons, et cetera. So we can, I'm not the one who's coming here trying to make them look bad. I'm asking you to pay a claim which should be paid for a number of reasons. Number one, Corey indicates the horses aren't Rocky Acres horses. Well, I don't know if he has dropped the charges related to these two horses that were part of the information charged against those defendants March or April of 2014, but they were not dropped as of December 31st, 2015. At the time the horses were taken to the Simpsons for boarding, they were still horses attached to Rocky Acres. Yes, the private owner to whom they'd been released by the district court on the animal welfare hearing May 2nd had relinquished their ownership to the sheriff's office, but a determination had not been made at that time as to whether or not we could still use them as evidence for Rocky Acres. I was concerned that they might be questionable as evidence because they had been further mistreated by their prior owner after leaving the custody of the sheriff's office the first time. But they had not been released from that case, so they were in fact related to Rocky Acres. Number two, I was contacted by Deputy Harris, whose work on the Rocky Acres cases I would like to again highly commend. It's been incredibly good. I was contacted by him when I was out of town at a Montana State Bar Clee, September 29th, telling me that for the first time since the horses had been released May 2nd, Agent Wall had gone to check on their well-being, something we should have been doing monthly, and I had advised the sheriff's office of that at the time that private horses were first released. At that time, they were found to be a 1 or a 1.5 on the Henneke score, which is as hungry as you can get before you're dead as a horse. So they needed to be immediately removed. I discussed with Brandon what we might do about that. I said, I need to think about this over the weekend. It was a Friday, and we'll get touch base on Monday. Over the weekend, I came back to town. I happened to talk to Tiffany Simpson, who's sitting here with me. She's a bartender, was a bartender at that time, and until just a few weeks ago at the Betsy Bar, where I am known to frequently eat, but not actually drink as much as has been attested by certain citizens. I spoke with her briefly about the fact that we had some horses in trouble. Ms. Simpson is a material witness and a former volunteer at the Rocky Acres facility. She and her husband and kids volunteered there before they knew.
I think we're getting kind of off the subject.
Right,
And I think the county needs to know, so I want Corey to go ahead and talk to Mr. Meehan, and then you can come back with whatever questions you have.
Well, first, and I'm gonna clarify a comment, first of all, in regards to what Ms. Bossy just said, is that discussion between myself and Ted Walsh, he told us that those animals had no more evidentiary value because they were worse shape than they were before. And that's why I said they're not Rocky Acres horses. The owners of those horses acquired those Gray Cloud Ready, acquired them back in May, early June of 2014. And they had a written agreement saying that they were gonna maintain the welfare of those animals as they were when they picked them up. And in July, John Sorensen was incarcerated in Park County on a different charge for a different crime with a 5-year DOC commit. Madonna Sorensen, the wife of John, had shoulder surgery, had somebody that she had hired to take care of these two horses who failed to do so. His name was Carter Schulte. And so lo and behold, with a discussion with Miss Bossy, she didn't want to pursue charges against Madonna for animal cruelty because the animals were obviously not taken care of. And so I gave her Madonna's number, and between the three of them, they had a conversation. What conversation is beyond me. Ms. Bossy asked myself and Ted Wall to go out and inspect Simpson's property in October, I believe it was October 21st, if I'm not mistaken. Ted Wall and myself went out there and we inspected her. She put a 3-strand smooth wire fence up, she had a water tank, she had no shelter. She walked us over to her garage and said that they were gonna modify their garage into a barn. They had to move a bunch of stuff out and they were gonna work at it. She showed us her hay that she had purchased prior to any animals being brought to the location. Ted Wall and myself both said it's too hot. These horses are not in a condition you can feed them that quality hay. The hay is great, there's not a doubt in my mind. It just, in a horse that's of ill health, you just don't give them that type of quality. I talked to her, she needed to find a farrier. I told her basically that as long as she could show us that she can maintain and keep these animals the way they need to be, I was gonna sign the horses over to her, no adoption fees or nothing. They were gonna be hers and everything else. Nowhere at any time did I discuss any boarding fees or anything else. And in an email further down the line with Ms. Bossy, I indicated that I didn't have any conversations about taking care of anything from the county aspect. And Ms. Simpson called and said that she had issues with the horses, and I made a comment that obviously the Simpsons were unable to care for the animals, and I'd go back and get them since they're in the sheriff's office name. And I got an email back from Ms. Bossy that says that I would be violating a person's Fourth Amendment rights to do so. So, and that is actually, I still have the email on it. So, in the grand scheme of things, exactly what County Attorney Swanson says is that, in my mind, is that those horses, I was told, weren't part of Rocky Acres because they lost their evidentiary value. I took the county attorney at the time for her word. I didn't get that in a written agreement either, and I don't feel that they are Rocky Acres horses. I don't even treat them as Rocky Acre horses now. They're sheriff's office property is what they are. If you find it in the good graces of your heart to pay it, feel free. If you don't, obviously a choice as well. But it's not a big conspiracy theory. It wasn't an alternative motive. If I wanted to board horses for Rocky Acres, they'd go down with the other geldings that are down at Walsh's instead of having them all over the place. In regards to the 2 horses that are at my house, the colt and the mare, both of them are special needs. We have a very large bill for those 2 horses from Montana Equine out of Logan to the tune of $5,400. I wasn't going to put him back in a herd environment, and Gump needs his hooves shaved every 10 days because of just the way he was born premature. It's a reason why it's a little more money. It takes more time. It's not like they're sitting out in a pastured field. They're in a stall. They're actually taking up 2 stalls. And 2 weekends ago, I spent 10 hours cleaning up horse manure with the tractor. So it's a lot more time consuming than just putting them out in pasture. That's why there's a difference between, if you look at John Walsh's, why there's an increased cost when it comes to the stalls and paddocks than the ones that are on pasture. And Deputy Anderson has his on pasture, not in stalls and not in barn stalls or paddocks or anything else. So to clarify those on why it is the way it is, that is what it is.
So if she wants to
May
respond,
I
I
have
think that'd be
permission to
fine.
talk now?
And I'd like to have a chance to kind of wrap up, I guess, when we're done with all this stuff.
Okay.
All right, so I'll just go through the whole deal. And there are a few emails here that were apparently provided by the sheriff's office to Mr. Swanson, and he's provided a copy to me. There are more emails than that, and I did keep a copy for myself, so I will provide them if we have to challenge this further beyond today's meeting. These horses were also special needs. Again, when they came into the custody of the sheriff's office again, they were a 1 and a 1.5 according to Agent Wells' assessment on the Henneke. That means the horse has to be fed 6 times a day, small amounts of a certain grade of food, before they can go back to being on pasture. So the amount of time and effort that the Simpsons put in feeding these horses 6 times a day, obviously, in my mind, merits that they be given some recompense. Whether or not they were Rocky Acres horses, I guess I have plenty of defenses to that. Number one, I had a lengthy conversation with the assigned investigator to the case, Deputy Anderson, who apparently isn't here today, or Deputy Harris, who I'd be happy to bring in and we could discuss what I talked to him about. But I said to him, They may not be able to be used as evidence for Rocky Acres now because they've been further maltreated. However, we also discussed the fact that I had every intention of prosecuting John Sorensen, the individual who further maltreated them. Those cases and the reports were left for Mr. Swanson to charge or not charge at his discretion. Apparently, he's made the decision not to charge, I guess, because he's claiming that the horses aren't evidence. Whether or not they're evidence in a criminal case, I guess I would ask you as a moral question, why would you think that property of the sheriff's office that was placed with private citizens for care, whatever the reason they're property of the sheriff's office, that those private citizens shouldn't get some recompense for the care? Yes, there's no written agreement. I have text messages here that I sent to Under Sheriff Meehan saying, when can you come to my office so we can discuss this? I had a meeting set with Ted Wall at 9 o'clock on October 20th. He called me 4 minutes before the meeting to cancel, saying that he had a herd of cows he forgot about that he had to take care of. At that time, I said, Ted, can you come this afternoon? Can you come tomorrow? Can you come Wednesday? Can you come Thursday? Can you come Friday? We need to put something in writing before we place these horses with the Simpsons so they know what their expectations are and what the parameters are that they have to meet in order to be allowed the opportunity to adopt. When I spoke to the Simpsons, when I spoke to Tiffany, and she's here to speak to you when and if necessary, when I said you might have this opportunity to care for these horses and then adopt them, I said to her at that time, I have been left out of the arrangements for payment, etc. The sheriff's office has been handling that, but it's my assumption that you will be provided the same and treated equitably the same as any other individual providing care to these horses with regard to any financial assistance for their feed, for boarding, and with regard to them getting the vet care for any pre-existing conditions. We've taken care of the veterinary care of any of these horses that came from Rocky Acres who had pre-existing conditions. So that was what they understood before they agreed to say yes. So again, I was supposed to meet with Ted on the morning of October 20th. He called 4 minutes before he canceled the meeting. I think it was later that day or the next morning that the horses showed up at the Simpsons. Is that correct? Without calling them first to say, hey, are you guys ready for the horses? They just, she got a call from Under Sheriff Meehan and he said, we'll be there in 10 minutes or something of that nature.
Actually, that's where I'll inject. They did show up and looked at my property, did tell me that the hay was too hot. Officer Meehan had told me if you can, when you get bales of hay at a 50-50, but no more than 50-50, we will bring the horses out to you. I said, okay, I will get on it right away. I can call my hay guy, the whole bit. They left. I called my hay guy, started making arrangements. I called him back. I said, I can have hay here, the type that you would prefer them to be on, by tomorrow. I was then told, we're 5 minutes from your house, the horses are loaded. So they dropped off the horses and my hay guy showed up while they were still on property, dropping off the horses. So this all happened, they literally showed up at like 1 o'clock, I'd say, probably.
Yeah, 1:32.
Like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The horses were on my property by 4:30 that afternoon. And that was, I had no idea they were even showing up. I mean, I literally opened the door and grabbed my dogs because they were out checking out, you know, why is this truck pulling in my driveway? So I was caught by surprise had I known that I needed all these other things. And as far as the shelters and things go, we had discussed that day too. I was told, you know, let's get these horses here, start getting them recovering, and the shelters, providing they have that big gully on our property, that's fine, but let's get them started on their rehabilitation. So as far as the shelters go, I was in not a huge hurry to get a shelter up on my property because I was informed that they would be fine as long as they could find shelter behind the trees. So I just wanted to clarify that part of it.
No, that's true.
Because it was not you have to have shelters up before the horses get here. You have to have this, and this. Everything to get them into a safe zone is what we did, and everything that Mr. Wall and Officer Meehan had told us that we needed to continue working on was stuff that we were more than willing to continue working on, but we didn't have a timeline to do it.
And I guess I want to take an over for you.
No, you're fine. I just wanted to clarify
Interject
this
if
with
you have anything that you, but one of the things that goes along with all this is for weeks here, you know, I do go to the Betsy 2 or 3 times a week. I have dinner there and a beer or two. And every time I saw Tiffany, she asked me, when are we gonna have a written contract that says how many months we have to take good care of them before we're allowed to have them for adoption? And I wanna be clear about something. When I called Ted Wall to discuss this, after finding out from Deputy Harris that these horses really needed desperately to be removed from the Sorensen's place, I suggested to Ted Wall, why don't you just have Madonna Sorensen sign them over to the Simpsons, and then we don't have to pay for anything. They accept them as is if they're willing to do that, and there won't be any complications. Agent Wall's concern was that if the Simpsons then didn't take care of them, we'd have to go to the trouble of a half hour or an hour's worth of time at most to write up a search warrant to get them seized if they were again neglected or malnourished on their property. So I said to him, and I advised him and cautioned him, and this was a phone call, so I don't have it in writing. I later memorialized all this stuff in writing repeatedly, trying to get somebody to come meet with me so we could actually create a contract. I very much wanted to do that for the Simpsons, and they were asking me about that repeatedly. But I advised Agent Wall, if we're gonna hold on to these as property of the county, then it's my opinion, my legal opinion, that we are obligated legally to treat these folks the same as anybody else caring for animals in our legal custody. Okay, we have to provide them with assistance for feed and boarding, and we have to provide the horses with the veterinary care. We can't expect them, especially with no terms set out in writing, or even set out clearly orally to them, we can't expect them to just pour hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars into horses that don't even belong to them. I mean, that would be a really big expectation to have, and we have nobody else meeting that kind of an expectation in caring for these horses, whether or not they think that down the road, I know that one of the horses that's at Deputy Anderson's, he intends to adopt when and if that's an opportunity available to him after the case is resolved. In any case, as I said, I started to reach out by email to, one of the things that was said to the Simpsons in one of the first couple meetings with Meehan and Wall was that Tani Szymanski, the state veterinarian who is the veterinarian on the Rocky Acres case, would come out and do another Henneke assessment in order to verify Wall's assessment, because he's not a licensed veterinarian, so that they would have a starting point for Henneke, and then presumably when we put this into writing, there would be you have to get them up to a 4 or a 5 before we will let you adopt them, okay, before we will sign ownership over to you. That never happened. The emails that have been provided to me here, copies of, there's several here saying, when are you gonna get Tani out there? I never got a reply from Wynn, so I finally just started copying Tani, and she directly contacted me and said, I'll make myself available, just let me know. I gave her the Simpsons number and let her work that out, and I guess she never did get out there because...
No, she did.
She did, okay, she did get out
She
there at
came
some
out,
point.
and that was something that I wanted to inject with Officer Meehan as well. She came out approximately a month after we had started caring for the horses.
So of course...
She did all of that. The problem that Officer Meehan was saying that I had with the horses had nothing to do with aggression. It had to do with Grey Cloud had a mass of some sort on his foot. Tani looked at it, said just keep an eye on it. I think he'll be sound, everything should be fine. 3 days later, it busted open. That's when I called and said, the sore has busted open. These are not my horses. I don't know where to take them. I don't know what I can and cannot do legally with them. I need somebody out there to check his foot. That's when the problem that Officer Meehan said that we had with the horses, that was the only problem we ever had with those horses.
So moving on then to other issues, and I noticed here that, so I again was repeatedly through email, and these are some, I would give you the remainders of them so you have the full picture. I was asking these folks to respond to me, Brenda, Ted, and Wynn, so we could put these terms into something that they could rely on. As Corey points out, contract law, in best practices, you have it in writing. Yes, it's very sloppy that there wasn't a written contract. It was not the fault of the county attorney's office. I asked over and over again. I have text messages that I sent to Under Sheriff Meehan. When are we going to get together and talk about these horses? I never got a response. I will say, in the case of Under Sheriff Meehan, he had a very understandable event in his personal life that kept him away from work a few weeks after this occurred, so I don't put the blame largely on him. Brenda, however, I sent all these emails, read receipt, delivery receipt, they were being read, they were not being responded to. Missing from, I kept pushing the issue, yes, and along with many issues in the 2.5 years that I was here, where I tried to, as is my statutory obligation, advise and counsel the sheriff's office on legal practices, I often got kickback from them, and they weren't happy, and they didn't want to hear my advice, they didn't want to hear what I had to say. Eventually, right before Thanksgiving, and unfortunately Tiffany can attest to this because she was CC'd, right before Thanksgiving I had sent a reminder email saying, guys, we really need to do something about this. The horses have been there by that point almost over a month, so October 20 to whatever was Thanksgiving, the 28th, so a month and another week. At that point, for whatever reason, Under Sheriff Meehan wrote back and said, tell the Simpsons we're coming to take the horses because obviously they can't take care of them. And I wrote back and said, what are you talking about? And he CC'd it, unfortunately, to the Simpsons because I had CC'd as well. So the day before Thanksgiving, and they have a 5-year-old child as well as a couple other kids who are bonding with these horses and loving on these horses and thinking they're going to become part of their family. Day before Thanksgiving, they've got the Broadwater County Sheriff's Office threatening to come take the horses away because they're asking for assistance with taking care of the horses that they don't yet own. I wrote back and said, I'm shocked that you would do this. I think it's hateful, number one. I think it's also possibly legally actionable. And certainly, it's just horrible practices. Why would you treat a citizen who's gone to these efforts and done this work on behalf of the county? Mind you, if they had not taken these horses, yes, they would have been up at the fairgrounds and a deputy would have had to feed them 6 times a day. And this is at a time where all the other horses were brought up to 4s and 5s on the Henneke and didn't require that kind of special care. So this was a huge thing that these citizens were doing for the county. I realize that Mr. Swanson thinks all of this is ridiculous by his facial expressions and et cetera, but
I don't think the issue's ridiculous. I
I'm-
think some of your characterizations are so
My
far off base,
characterizations
it's
are
not
not
even
off
funny.
base at all. It's in writing, and I have had these interactions personally with Brenda.
Well, let's
Mr.
wrap
Meehan,
this
you got
up.
something to say?
I
wrap this
have
up.
not finished. If I could
Well, I think-
finish, I believe I could finish, and then you could have another turn.
You got something to say real
How much,
quickly?
let's say, how much longer?
Here's the only
As
thing I
long
wanna
as it
interject
takes to
is
talk
this.
about all the issues that are
Okay,
related.
hold on one second. We still have not heard from Tiffany Simpson. I think we.
I
all
am not
heard from her.
finished. This is my claim, and I'm defending my claim as a former department head, and I would like to finish my presentation.
How about if you give us a timeline?
How about if I finish?
Okay,
All
an
right.
hour? What are we talking here?
Corey,
I'm
really,
just wondering, how much longer?
my time's worth even more than yours, so if you would let me finish.
Your time's worth more than all of us in the whole room. All right, go ahead,
So
Carla.
now that
Go
I
ahead.
have to say something. We've got people here waiting for a hearing.
I understand that,
We
and
can't
I'm
keep
sorry.
Going back and forth.
My expectation was that you would sign this, that you would approve this duly authorized claim, which, by the way, as I attested, was placed under the door of the accounting office at 6:15. I am responding to the allegations that are raised by Mr. Swanson. His concern seems to be that I sent an email to, under Sheriff Meehan, to Sheriff Ludwig, to Tammy Rouser, and with copy to Commissioner Obert, who was then the chair, at 12:09 a.m. on Thursday, January 1st. Yes, that's true. I volunteered and continued to do work to leave the office as neat and nice as possible for Mr. Swanson as I could. I think it was about 12:25 before I left the office on January 1st. But the claim itself was dated on the 31st, it was signed, and I placed it under the door before I left to have dinner, before coming back to the office to work some more. So there's nothing legally that undermines the claim. Beyond that, I think it's important to point out that, yes, in numerous conversations with Wynn, Ted, and Brenda, the Simpsons were told that they would have the opportunity to adopt the horses. Never, despite my many requests, never were they willing to sit down with me to put the parameters in writing. At one point, the Simpsons were offered a third Rocky Acres horse to adopt by Brenda. Then, when I pushed and pushed and said, okay, there's a health issue with one of these horses, it's pre-existing, we need to take those horses to the vet, we need to provide health care to the horses and get an estimate on how much it's going to cost to care for that horse, provide that estimate to the Simpsons and let them make a decision about whether they want to adopt in light of that issue. So on December 4th, the horses were removed, they were taken to the vet, and then they were brought to the fairgrounds, and they were not returned to the Simpsons. When I asked why that was, I was told it's because the horses were highly dangerous and should not be around inexperienced horse people or children. When I talked with Deputy Harris about that, I was told that Brenda's reasoning for that was based on how one of the horses acted when John Sorensen tried to put it in a horse trailer in the first or second week of May when he came to pick up the horses. So that basically establishes that the sheriff's office, knowing these horses were highly dangerous and should not be around inexperienced people or children, placed them on October 20th with fairly inexperienced horse people who have children aging from 5 to 17 or 16 years old, 14, I'm sorry. So that's the picture, and that's, you know, threatening to take the horses because they asked for a little bit of help the day before a holiday, taking the horses. Their children, that I understand, are still asking, where are our horses? At this point, the Simpsons have washed their hands. They're frustrated about what happened. They called Brenda, my understanding from talking to Mr. Simpson is at least a half a dozen times after December 4th, asking, when are we gonna be able to adopt the horses? They were willing to pay over $1,000, I believe, in veterinary care required for one of the horses, and they were gonna still adopt the horses. And the phone calls haven't been returned now, from December 4th to almost 3 months. So that's the situation. I think asking us to pay $645 to them for, out of probably $1,500 or more that they expended in order to provide this care to horses that belong to us is entirely reasonable in light of how they were treated and the mixed messages they were given and the fact that they were never provided parameters for adopting the horses. They had been promised they would be by sheriff's office staff, and the fact that they still have not been given the opportunity to adopt the horses.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Tiffany, what was your understanding of your taking in horses at the time that you took in the horses?
My understanding was that we had 6 months to get them to a healthy, reasonable Henneke scale, and that we would have help with at least the hay. And at that time, I even voiced to Carla, I said, if we are going to have horses that, you know, we've bonded with, cared for, whatever, the money is not necessarily a determining factor whether we're gonna say yes, we'll take them or not. My kids have been bugging me since we moved to the state of Montana to get horses. That's why we originally started volunteering at Rocky Acres. So when Officer Meehan came out, you know, he said, we need hay, and I'm like, I just spent $300 on hay, and now I need to spend more? He's like, it's too hot, you got it. Okay, fine, I'm gonna do what it needs to be done. And I did call Carla at that point, after the horse had already been dropped off. I said, you know what, I just had to buy 2 more bales of hay. Is there a way for me to get help from the hay bank? And she had informed me, I will look into it, we will get it taken care of, let's get it all situated and calm down and help. We weren't even going to pursue any of this, even after they went to the vet and we got a bill saying it was gonna cost us $1,500 to get these horses the veterinary care that they needed. Gray Cloud needed some issues with his penis and, you know, all that other. We hired a horse trainer to go out to the fairgrounds to see just how aggressive he thought that Reddy was. Could he be worked with? Could he be made a good horse? The horse trainer had no issues with him. We walked right up to him, we put a halter on him. The horse trainer jumped on him bareback. He said, this horse has been a very good horse, he just needs your love. And, you know, when we went out to the fairgrounds on the 10th of December, both Gray Cloud and Reddy came straight to us. Like, they knew exactly who we were. We went in, pet him, no problems, no aggression. So I don't know where all the aggression stuff came from. We weren't gonna pursue the claim and everything. And then we got to the point where we were like, wait, we put all this money into horses that we have loved. We've done everything. We put fencing up. We weren't even going to put horse stuff on our property until spring. We did it in the middle of winter. We did all of this and we have nothing to show for it. I've got kids crying, where are my horses? When do we get horses back? I was promised another horse by Sheriff Brenda when she said that these 2 were not gonna work out in her opinion. I called her and I said, you know what? I really wanna keep these 2 horses that we've originally become bonded to. If that 3rd horse does need a safe place to be, we're more than happy to take on a 3rd one, but 3's our limit, that's all we can afford to take. We don't wanna overextend ourselves, we don't want them to go hungry or any of those things. And I never got any calls back from it. At that point, I was like, okay, well, everybody else is getting help. We asked for help, we didn't get it. What do I do? You know, and that's when Carla had said, we'll file a claim to at least reimburse you for part of it. I'm not asking for all of the grain and the supplements and the treats and all of that stuff. I'm not asking for reimbursement of that. I'm asking about all of the hay, which I still have a bale and a half of hay sitting, rotting in my pasture, because I don't even have horses to eat them. I've had one bale completely broken open by the deer, and they've completely devoured it, and that's my good hard-earned money that I put into taking care of 2 animals that I didn't have to take.
Where are the
So-
horses today?
I don't know. I went to go to the fairgrounds to visit them, and they were gone.
They're Walters. If I can, and clarify a few things. My understanding is, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Ted Wall and Brenda Ludwig came over with signed titles by me saying that if you wanted those horses, you could have them, and you declined to take them.
That is true. They
Okay.
did that when I asked for a vet to come out
Okay.
and
This
check
is,
them.
this is after the
Then
fact.
they want, no,
No,
this
it
was
is not.
before the vet even came
Well,
out
I
to
signed the
look at
titles
them.
over and you declined to take them.
I did,
I
because they
asked-
did
Hold on, let
not.
me finish, okay? Y'all had your piece. This is the main point of this, and I guess is where I'm gonna go with this, is that we're gonna have to foster these animals out at some point because they're gonna have to go away.
Yeah.
Now, is the county gonna be responsible to foster, to pay people to foster out animals that they choose to have? That's a big question here. If you're gonna go down this road with this one, and this is nothing personal, Tiffany, by any means, but if we're gonna pay for people to foster an animal for them to have, I went out there every week and looked at your horses, determined how well they were doing, okay? Guess where they were? They were out in the pasture, okay? Now, you're sitting here telling me you fed them 6 times a day, but they were out on pasture the entire time. Every time I went there, they were out on pasture, okay? When we fed 6 times a day, they were inside of a stall, okay? So there's a huge difference, okay? But the point I'm trying to make is that if we're gonna foster animals out, then when we have 27 horses that need to find 27 homes, I suggest and suspect that you're gonna have to do the same thing until that time process is done. If this is the road that you wanna go down, that's my advice, that's my suggestion. She just admitted the fact that Sheriff Ludwig and Ted Wall offered those horses to her if she declined to take them. Regardless of what she's saying now, she was offered them, signed titles in hand, she declined.
So can I think we're,
No, I'm sorry, we have to
go ahead,
respond
Cor.
to.
I think we're pretty clear to the, you guys have seen a little bit of all the messes that's in. And I wanna apologize to you. You got caught in the middle of something else here that you weren't bargaining for. There was clearly other stuff going on, and I want to apologize to you, Tiffany, because you guys got more than you bargained for. And you also got less than you bargained for. And so I just want you to know that from my point of view on looking at this, I was looking at it just from the point of contract, and I have no ill will to you, never met you till today, no ill will at all toward you and your family and your horse situation, okay? And what I will tell you, commissioners, what's clear now, number one is, this is the kind of stuff we wanna get over. This doesn't do anybody any good. Citizens don't wanna sit here and see us argue over how long it takes to tell all about how all these people are evil in the past. So I would commit to you, this is the kind of stuff I'm trying to get us over, and we're gonna get through that. There should have been a written agreement, period. There wasn't. And guess what? A written contract on behalf of the county is the county attorney's responsibility. You can expect that from me. We have
And
to
I
deal
tried
with
to
it.
make one with the input of the sheriff's office.
let-
I'm not gonna let him make statements
Let
like
him
that.
finish.
I got it.
He's talking.
I got it, okay. Let's get over all that stuff in the past. We can sit here and fight forever over who is wrong. Here's what, and Wynn's point's exactly right. We have a lot of horses that we now have to figure out how to deal with. And I've got other things in motion with these cases that I think we're gonna have a chance to soon start getting rid of these horses. So what we'll do cooperatively between me and the sheriff's office is we'll put together a recommendation of an adoption program with a written agreement, and I'm gonna recommend that we do that where the county's not responsible for those costs once, but it's gonna be something in writing. Everyone's gonna know what the obligations are going forward, both the people receiving the horses and the people that are handing over those horses, and there's gonna be some care and all that stuff going on. I think what's crystal clear from this, all this discussion that's happened today, is that the Simpsons were given some representations that some of this payment would come through, and I think it came from Carla, well, she told us twice it did. So, I think the county ought to probably pay this bill out of a matter of fairness to them, because they were told things that weren't provided in writing, it was sloppy, but I think in terms of getting us through this mess, I think we should do that. And I'm not saying that because I'm worried about a lawsuit, and Carla cannot sue the county over this, okay? Don't worry about that.
I can sue the county over refusing a claim that was submitted when I was the duly elected county attorney, yes I can.
You can't.
Yes, I
You
can.
don't have standing to do it.
I can file a writ of mandate, Corey.
But you can't do it.
Yes, I can. I've already consulted with an attorney about this. I have a couple things that I.
Okay,
Let's
let's
finish-
get back to this horse.
let's
It
finish
seems
up.
like County
Let's
Attorney
finish up.
Swanson has recommended that you pay this. Now, I have a couple things to say in response to some statements that were made, and I think I have the right to say that.
Can
Yes.
I finish, Commissioners? I recommend, out of the effort to get this thing behind us, and we especially take care of the Simpsons, because I think they got caught in the middle of some personality things here that was not their fault. I think you should pay that, I thought it was $545, she just said $645. So, whatever that reasonable amount is, and I think then you should expect from me and the sheriff's office a clear program of how we're gonna move into the adoption stuff. The rest of it, Carla and I can sit here and argue for the next 4 weeks, it's not gonna do any of us any good. So I'd recommend we end the agenda time now on
Sorry,
this.
saved by the bell.
And if you guys wanna make a vote to pay on that, the deal there, and then we move on. Because I know we have another agenda item next that a lot of these people are waiting on.
I understand that, but a couple of statements were made directed toward me and my services as county attorney, and I have, I think, the right to, since those were made publicly, to respond publicly. So I would like to have just 1 minute to respond.
One question. The original claim says $545.
Right, and I
You
just.
crossed that out and changed it to $645. Why?
I just explained that to you when I sat down here 20 minutes ago, because I had only put down 1 month's boarding, which is being paid to other people at $100 per horse per month, and they actually had the horses for a month and a half, for 6 weeks, so that adds an additional $100.
Why doesn't that add $50?
Because there's 2 horses. As to the fact that it was done sloppily, I had a meeting arranged with Ted Wall before the horses were taken to the Simpsons, and it was the intention to have a written agreement, which the Simpsons had requested from the first time we talked about it. We want something in writing that says, how long do we have to take care of the horses, how good would they have to be before they're given to us as adoption, how much assistance will be provided. As an attorney with many years of practice experience, I certainly understand the importance of putting things in writing, and I attempted to do that. It was supposed to happen before the horses went. Ted failed to come to the meeting, he failed to reschedule a meeting, they took the horses out there without even letting me know. If they had told me they were taking the horses there, I would have said, whoa, we don't have it in writing yet. I then attempted for months to get them to put something in writing. And the failing there, the sloppiness is all, in my opinion, on the part of the Broadwater County Sheriff's Office, and the written record is very clear of my many attempts to make that clear, to make all the parameters clear. With regard to the threat that you're gonna have to do this for 27 horses, you can't foster out any of the other 27 horses until or unless the criminal case is finished and the horses are either surrendered to the ownership of the county by the district court, provided back to the defendants if the case goes away, or voluntarily relinquished by the defendants if they choose to do that.
That's
And
my
of,
problem.
and
Let
of
me-
course,
let me
if,
let
no,
me advise
okay,
the
I was
commission on
told,
that.
I was told that.
Let me advise the commission on that. Don't
Excuse
worry
me,
about
let me
that.
finish. You're interrupting me, you didn't want me interrupting you. That we already had talked to Joanna Dove of the Horse Council, and it's my understanding that they were gonna work with us to do proper adoptions of all the horses when and if the time comes. As a citizen and an attorney and former county attorney who worked on that case for the majority of the time, I certainly have the right to provide you with that explanation. That's all I have to say. Now that my character's been attacked, you wonder why I don't miss working here. That's why. I do think you should pay the claim, and I would ask that you take a vote today and do that.
Hopefully we're ready to move on to a vote, because I'm gonna throw one on the table.
Okay, I'm gonna,
There were
I'll ask
5
Corey for one more last.
I just wanted to see if Tiffany wanted to add anything and tell you that I know you didn't want to come get in the middle of this fight, and I'm sorry about that, okay? So I just wanted you to hear that from you.
I'm sorry, I forgot to respond to one other accusation that was made by Under Sheriff Meehan, that they were offered ownership and they refused it. That was after I had 3 or 4 times asked the sheriff's office to get the vet check that they should have had for pre-existing conditions before being requested to take ownership. Then that was when Brenda, I believe, and Ted showed up at Ms. Simpson's workplace while she was working and said, take ownership right now, take this paperwork. And she said, no, I don't want to do that. I want to be sure that they're healthy or what their health conditions are. So I want to answer that accusation. As to Corey, I appreciate that Corey's apologized to Ms. Simpson for having to go through this. However, I've been sending emails about this issue for 7 weeks now, and the opportunity existed for him to talk to Ms. Simpson, to talk to me, and to get all of this resolved without any of this having to be on the public record, and he chose not to take that opportunity. I got no calls, Ms. Simpson got no calls, so it is what it is.
All I would say is let's solve some problems in the future and stop spending the rest of our year fighting over the past. because
We're not the ones objecting to the claim, but you are.
Let's move on, let's move along.
And you want to recommend to us to go ahead?
I think we should do it not because there's a written contract, but because Carla gave oral assurances to the Simpsons that they would be paid. They relied upon that. I don't think it's a way to do business, but I think out of fairness to the Simpsons, they should be taken care of. Not the full amount, but the amount that's on that claim. That's all I would say.
I assured them they'd be treated equitably because I made the incorrect assumption that the Broadwater County Sheriff's Office would treat them
So
equitably.
you say it should be 5 years? Is that what you're saying?
I'd ask Tiffany about the extra 2 weeks. That was the part I wasn't clear on. So do you want to just?
Well,
you
when
have an
I,
extra 6 weeks?
when I was doing the claim with Carla, she had typed it up for me because I don't have access to a printer. And I said, no, I've had him 6 weeks, not 4.
So I'm fine with this.
So that's why she, you know.
Franklin, we're way over time on this.
I know.
Again, before discussion, we should have a vote or a motion on the table. I'm going to put one on the table so that we can at least close the door on this subject. Tiffany, there's at least 5 things stated, not only by you, by a variety of people who've spoken today, that lead me to believe that you were under the understanding that you were much more like the others taking care of horses. Comments by you, comments by things that happened. I don't care who said what when. You were under the understanding that you were going to be reimbursed, at least for the part of this. Therefore, I am going to move that we reimburse you the $645 that you're asking for the full 6 weeks for both horses. That's the motion. I do have another comment after the vote.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any more discussion before we vote? No more discussion? We vote for the motion on the floor that we pay this bill, $645 to the Simpsons. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Reluctantly, I'll say aye.
I would also like to request that from here on out, this isn't the only thing that's gonna come up. We need contracts, we need policies. We're no longer in a loosey-goosey county where we can do things flying by the seat of our pants. We have to have contracts so that our citizens know where they stand. We have to have contracts so that the switch from past to present is smooth and equitable and respectful for our citizens. So thank you for bringing up the contract. That was the other thing I had highlighted, as well as the things said that pointed me in the direction of believing Tiffany was ill-treated in this situation and should be treated fairly. So, contracts. We don't have any choices.
I agree.
Tried to get one, couldn't get cooperation from the sheriff's office. That's about what happened for 2.5 years. My understanding is it happened in District 1 too, so.
Sorry.
Yeah, I am.
You're gonna be here yet, aren't you, Cory?
Yep.
Okay. Did you have any?
I just, I guess, she was so elegantly to bash the sheriff's office, and I was opening the door to any further comments of how poor law enforcement we have in Broadwater County, and more than happy to hearing that if you'd like to partake. So, I think that was me being facetious, so, have a great day.
You two win.
Okay, we're way over scheduled a resolution to uphold the UPCA code of 61-8-310 regarding speed limit at Winston. And at this time, I'd like to have Cory, and then Nicole might have some comments too, but I think Cory has the warning.
So commissioners, we spoke, I think, a week or 2 weeks ago, and the resolution was specifically the county's authority to adjust a speed limit on a highway that runs through the county, that there's kind of several different options of how you could reduce or in some cases increase the speed limit. The posted speed limit on the 2-lane highway through Winston is currently 70 miles an hour per day and 65 per night for that whole stretch. There, under the statute that we talked about at length, there's a couple different things that are stated. First, that generally the county would request a traffic study from the Department of Transportation. We did that, we received that. That traffic study looked basically just at what's the average speeds and said, we think you shouldn't reduce the speed limit. However, it said the county does have the authority to do that if it chooses to do that for other factors. And based on the input from the citizens of Winston, based on some of the hearings, and based on your own communications you've received, there is definitely community support to reduce that speed limit. And the factors seem to be focused on the crosswalk there, where you come across the railroad tracks and you could do the crosswalk to where the store and the post office are. And that's also an area where the fire hall is. That's also the area where there's a school bus stop. And the statute allows the commission to reduce the speed limit where outside of an urban area, or another way would be by designating it as a school zone. A certain area is a school zone, and then setting kind of the length of a speed zone that you could then reduce the speed to no less than 80% of the normal speed limit, rounded down to the nearest 5 miles an hour. That 80% would take us down to about 55 miles per hour. So after we spoke, I said, well, I need to do a little homework with the commission, with the Department of Transportation. So I spoke at length to one of the chief engineers, and a couple things. One, clearly they believe that under that statute dealing with the school zone, that the commission could designate that school bus stop as a school zone, requiring or allowing you to reduce the speed. And there was a statute at one point that said you had to restrict it to school hours and school months, and that statute's been repealed. So you could set it at that, and you could allow that to happen for the whole year. And some of the things that have happened in other communities is that even during the summer, there are various summer programs where they'll still use a school facility, a school bus stop, pickup, those kinds of things, so that even the summer, sometimes you have the kids and you have all those same factors that are a safety issue. So, number one, you can reduce it under the school provision, and you can have that reduction for all year round, according to the Department of Transportation. Secondly, they recommend that if you reduce it, you just do a uniform speed level. You don't do one for day and one for night. So under their recommendation, they say, let's just go with 55 miles an hour for both day and night. The third thing is that in that statute, it specifically says you should consult with the Department of Transportation if you're doing a reduction under the school provision, and actually the Department of Transportation would implement it. So the county wouldn't have to pay for the signs. That was a little different from what we had talked about previously. So what I was basically instructed to do was, one, the commission could go ahead and do a resolution reducing the speed limit to what you want, set the boundaries at what you recommend, and they would stick with those boundaries unless there was some unforeseen safety or engineering reason where they would need to come back and say, we need to adjust it here or there. The second thing would be sending that resolution to the Department of Transportation. They will then order the signs, and they said it may take them a couple of months to get the signs made and then put in place. And then as soon as the signs are in place, that's when the enforcement begins for the reduced speed limit. Generally, whenever there's a change like that, they recommend that law enforcement issue warnings for a while, and then until everybody kind of gets aware that this is a changed speed limit, and then they start issuing tickets. But that's really up to the Highway Patrol and the Sheriff's Office. They're going to be probably reasonable with people. So that's my report back to you after last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever we talked, and Department of Transportation says we think it's fully within your authority to go forward and make the reduction.
And you'll draw up the resolution.
There was a draft resolution, and it included the school zone. The only thing that wasn't in that draft was the actual number, was 55 miles an hour. Is that right?
No, I think that was even in the title, wasn't it? Because it was in the resolution that was in the agenda. We, just so that you guys know, last week we actually voted on 55 from the top of the hill at the south end of Winston to the curve into Pole Creek on the north end of Winston.
Now,
So-
I got a question. Is that where you would put the warning signs or the actual speed zone would start?
Speed zone with a warning sign before that.
Okay.
Yeah, so that, you know, people aren't just, the last thing you want is somebody told to slow down and they don't know why.
do you
'Cause they won't
need
do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
somebody like maybe Nicole or somebody to go out there and either put it in tenths or feet?
I
Or have
I
you got
have
any-
some maps that I put together for you.
Oh, okay.
Kind of a rough draft. I know when we spoke last Tuesday, there was a discussion about, so this shows a 1 mile from the intersection of the highway. I only did one page, it's 3/4 of a mile and 4/10 of a mile. So to the south of this hill that we were talking about, it's 4/10 of a mile. To the north, 4/10 of a mile isn't enough. To the north, that north hill is 3/4 of a mile. I think it should be the same on either end.
for clarity.
So I guess my suggestion would be to go with the 3/4 mile from that intersection.
I agree.
Weasel Creek,
And that's
Highway
the
37.
posted limit, the warning sign will be.
Back it up. And I put a call into MDT because I know they have some regulation on the number of signs. Basically, you know, it's this Keep Montana Open. They have an actual acronym, a program that they have in place to limit the amount of signs. So there are some signs out there. Some that say reduce speed, or not reduce speed, speed zone ahead, I believe is what it says, or the, not speed zone. Regarding the school
Reduce
bus
speed, I
crossing,
think.
yeah, I can't remember the exact word.
Anyway,
But anyway, to put something, either remove that one and move that one back, or attach the speed limit sign to that, but I'm just thinking this 3/4 of a mile is it's a very easy amount to measure from the intersection of the highway, instead of saying it at the bottom of the hill, the top of the hill.
Yeah.
That's your preference, so that's just kind of a quick and dirty representation
and apparently with the
of
highways.
what that looks like with that distance.
I would already put up the signs, they'll decide how they wanna put it, as long as we give them
Right. Yeah, and I've actually texted Jeff DeMars because I know he's the best around here, and he would know exactly where those should be as far as the reduced speed
the.
zone. So, but as far as setting the actual speed limit signs, that's all I was looking at.
Yeah, I think that's a nice round number, so I move that, we continue with the 55 at 3/4 miles, on either side of Winston.
I'll second that motion.
Oh, any other discussion on that? Okay, been moved and seconded to hold it at the 55 and the 3/4 mile for the signs. Go ahead,
Should
Cory.
we do, was there any comment, public comment further before they vote? I don't know if it's needed.
Oh, maybe I should ask, I asked for comment.
Oh, you already did public comment? I'm sorry, I was
Or
reading.
discussion's what I asked for, but any comments from any of you while we're still open? It's, okay. Okay, now we'll go ahead and vote on the motion. I'll repeat it. The 55 for the speed and 3/4 mile each way. What's the beginning part gonna be? That school zone, I guess, go 3/4 mile from that, that'll be the starting.
I actually, when I mapped it, I measured it from the intersection of Weasel Creek
Okay,
and,
that's fine, as long as we, okay.
White Earth.
Uh,
Not White Earth. Weasel Creek. Pole Creek, no, not Pole Creek, Pole Creek is further down, anyway,
Beaver.
Beaver, thank you.
Beaver Creek. Yeah.
And Weasel Creek and Highway 287, so right there, that intersection, directly from the intersection, either direction.
Okay, so the highway knows which way, how.
Correct.
Okay, we'll vote on this. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed.
So-
So, in time, you'll have a speed limit.
We can just sign the resolution then, and,
The draft says 1 mile, so just change that to 3/4, and then we can sign it and send it to the Department of Transportation and go from there.
Okay, so I'll crop out the one, put 3/4 below that. You folks do, okay. I'll go ahead and put this date, 23. Look through anything else on this here.
Yeah, the rest of those are my notes, so let's go ahead and tear that.
Okay.
can we actually get a, yeah, I think with the printer 3/4 is probably a better
You
idea.
might wanna get an official one.
Yeah. And then, of course, we need the signature page.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, folks. Sorry you had to
Thank
wait
you.
so long.
Oh, thank you.
We definitely.
You've been waiting for a couple of years already, haven't you?
We enjoyed it.
Oh.
Now you see what we go through all the time, huh?
I feel sorry for you.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks, guys.
See you later.
Okay, I guess, anything else from you, Corey, for anything else? Nobody else? Board have any questions for Corey on anything else we haven't discussed? Okay, I guess, well, thank you, Corey.
All right.
Thanks, Cory.
Nicole,
Before I leave, I
thank-
just want to drop off these, we completed our joint land use study. And so this is the easy version of the final
Okay.
document. I have a complete setup. I have one for my office, one for your office, I'm sorry, and one for the clerk and recorder's office. That gives the entire background report, this executive summary, and the actual joint land use study report. So moving forward, there's going to be a joint land use coordination committee, and I'm hoping that you'll allow me to stay on there. So I'm going to stay on unless you tell me otherwise.
I think you've done so much already that it would be a shame for you not to continue.
Thank you, I've enjoyed it. And last Friday, actually, we met with Rick Solander with the Department of Defense. He came here from Washington DC to Lewis and Clark County to talk about funding and implementation of some of these plans. So just FYI, we'll be
Nice.
coming forward to you and kind of seeing where you want to go with this.
Why is hell on the front instead of us?
But you know, it just happens to be they have Fort Harrison. They're the initiator on this. You know, there's a lot of grant funding available through the Department of Defense, and they also fund through in-kind hours. So, which
Yeah,
is
I'd
also
say they have
coming.
a whole lot more money into this project than we do.
And
Yeah.
resources.
They paid for that picture.
I don't want to head this up, so I'm happy to
Right.
attend their meeting. So
Good
anyway,
job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Mm-hmm.
Or-
We have business to do.
Okay, what,
Last week, we got a letter from the Lions. And did you write a letter, a response? Did you email?
no, I didn't do anything.
All right, I did. Here's the letter, if you guys approve it, I'll put it in the mail today. The last thing we want is no response going to these groups and for them to find out that they can't have the kids looking for Easter eggs for the first time in 40-some years. So I went ahead and got it done. The other letter I wrote was a response to BOR. Franklin, did you respond to BOR last week?
Which was that on? On that,
On the walleye.
Walleye.
We need to put in the request to BOR for the walleye tournament because we are a managing partner. Did you respond?
right, no, I didn't.
Okay, I did because the last thing we want to do is lose the walleye festival because the commission didn't do what they were supposed to do. So there's that letter. That one, we voted on the Lions. We need to vote on that.
I'll make,
that too, man.
I'll make a motion that we send a letter to the Bureau of Rec for the relationship with BOR for the Silos Recreation Area.
A second.
Any more discussion? Moved and second, we send this letter for the walleye tournament, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed.
These are two letters that are things I've been working on, so I have no problem writing these. One is for support of House Bill 14, and the other one for House Bill 35. We voted on both already. This is a letter to be sent to those committees. Oh, yes, sorry.
I have a question. I was trying to look up 14, but I was kind of getting confused exactly what 14 is.
14 is a broadband bill, and it is a partner bill to a federal bill for broadband,
Okay.
It is to help smaller communities, of which Townsend is, to get broadband. Your larger companies will look at, and it's exactly what happened with electricity in the beginning of the century. The companies can get a bigger bang for their buck by servicing Chicago first, and the smaller cities, and then the little towns, and rural America. So in order to get those kinds of services to the more rural populations, there has to be some kind of assistance. That's what this is. The federal, my understanding is it services unserviced areas like Raidersburg. The state is for underserviced areas like Townsend. We have anywhere from 3, maybe 15 megabytes per second. Any more, 15 is the absolute minimum in order to run something. Like a CT scanner, like computers in the schools, like the Merlin system. So,
Like if we have an emergency,
right, an
so get
emergency.
the command center set up.
Oh, that's gonna suck us dry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So the bill is to support that being put in the communities through a grant or?
Mhm. Yep, it's a state grant.
Yeah.
Grant system, I guess.
Thanks for doing those letters.
Yeah, you bet, it's the job, as you well know. The only other thing I wanted to bring up, this is stuff that we got from Dan, and on page, I think it's 4, page 5 has the public hearings that we talked about. So Franklin, I will ask that you review that so we can make sure we're in compliance.
Oh, yeah, I got this.
But one thing Dan talked about, and we need to address this stuff, we have a county open meeting policy. And that policy states that anyone who wishes to speak has an initial 3 minutes to do so. If everybody is heard and they want to be heard again, they can have another 3 minutes. Franklin, you started the meeting
They
today
said
with,
5.
excuse me, no, he didn't. He said that's most common.
Yeah,
He
and
did
that-
not say there was a
And that's
requirement.
Marty said that part county.
Franklin,
so-
would you please let me finish? Our open meeting policy states 3 minutes. My request is, when you open the meeting with 5, you are not complying with an already voted on and established county policy. I would like to request that you follow the open meeting policy, which is official for Broadwater County. And I know I won't get an answer, but the other thing that brings to mind is, I think we need to put together ground rules for the commission. Last week, we had letters thrown, we had pounding on the table, we had interrupting, we had yelling multiple times. And it's, I think, hugely being downstairs. There seems to be an air of sport down there where these meetings are not a respectful place to do business. And that came out in spades last week. Part 3 of our meeting last week, Sharon, is quite a watch on YouTube. I think that we need to have ground rules for commissioner conduct amongst ourselves. We cannot continue this. We are adults, we are professionals, and we're not doing the job of the county, as is these letters, the budget. So much time is being spent fighting and throwing papers and letters that we're not taking the time to write those papers and letters. So I would like your blessing to put together a code of conduct for commissioners.
Yes.
All right. I will bring that forward hopefully next week. I would also like that on the agenda for 15 minutes. I don't think it should take more than that. I will email you a draft this week, but
You want
our
what on the
citizens
agenda
deserve
now?
more
For
than
what
this.
meeting is this?
Next week, next Monday, I want 15 minutes for a code of conduct policy for Broadwater County Commissioners.
Part 2nd. Okay. 145. Ahead of that is the Lower Deep Creek Drainage District.
Kind of walk through. Is it safe? Are you sure?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
All right.
No one's got a taser or firearm now.
I'm the only public here, you're the only tasers.
I don't even care.
Okay, be 245, what is it you wanted on there now, what is the wording?
Code of conduct policy for Broadwater County Commissioners. And it'll just be Dan's document shortened.
Sounds good.
And we have one more piece of mail, Franklin. Don't forget the budget information on the senior center.
Do what?
You have budget sheets in the mail. My guess is somebody wanted us to review the senior center. Perhaps the senior center representatives.
Okay, this year, under transport, you want the total that's left, or what did you wanna do? You wanna just go through it, or what? Yeah, nothing really was, I can't remember sure what's left on there.
I already have them. I made copies when I saw them in the mail.
This one here, it shows that they have remaining $11,516.
How much again, please?
$11,516,
And what's the original budget?
$33,000. Yeah, gotten budget. Year to date, so they spent $21,000 then.
You're getting low.
When you consider where we're at in the year, you don't want this, do you? Last week's letter. I'll take it downstairs.
What's this, they have their interfund operation transfer? Not you.
Good.
There's a budget 1,000, they have 1,000. What, you know, how many was that this year, Elaine? Interfund operation transfer.
At the beginning of the year, we transferred money into that account to make them whole with last year, about $5,000.
5,922?
Yep.
Sheet 5,000.
Interfund transfer is anything transferred with,
Oh,
from
oh, down.
one in,
Okay. So then, but they use all that, though.
Here's what they have.
You're right, I mean, this year,
Hi.
Everybody goes,
Yeah, no, it's nothing bad. I just was wondering, about the resolution for the times and places that you're doing for the courthouse and stuff. I just need that, if I could get that, please.
and Franklin, you should have a copy at the clerk and recorder's
Yeah.
office and the commissioners
Yeah.
as well, and then email it to
you
our
need, you
department
need a copy of
heads.
that, do you?
Yeah, please, and if I could just get it, if you could just tell me what you decided. Is the courthouse just 8 to 5?
Right. yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
And per diem is the same as the state
State,
approved, but
yeah, and then you guys continue to meet up here?
yeah.
Okay. I have an issue with, a lady that thinks that she can, since she's in the courthouse at 5, she can just come up into my office at 5 and do some research. So,
Did you tell her it doesn't work that way?
well, I just wanted to make sure that I have my,
You need documentation.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And we're not the only county that has it, but just because she thinks just because Audrey works the 410s and she's here late, she thinks that she can just be here. And I don't want that, so I just needed some documentation to back it up, so,
Yeah.
anyway.
I'll get you that copy.
Okay.
I got them all there.
I
It
know,
doesn't work.
no, the nicer you are, yeah. She makes my blood boil the minute she walks in. So, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Val.
Anything else you want on the senior citizen?
I already reviewed it.